Story 1. I don't have any experience here, but I think it would be reassuring if I was told something along the lines of, the measure of a man isn't the ability to create a child, but to raise a child in a loving, supportive home. This post is a bit out of my league, but there is much more to being a man than the ability to reproduce. How you live your life dictates much more about you. Story 2. My father found out about this when he was trying to have my two sisters and me. We were conceived through a sperm donor. At the end of the day, though, my dad is the best father anyone could have asked for, and his fertility didn't dictate that. Story 3. I was told I was infertile about 5 years ago and took it hard. It was right after my diagnosis with type 1 diabetes, so I felt broken and angry. My wife and I looked into in vitro fertilization and decided against it because of the financial costs and stress it can put on a relationship. Took time, but both of us accepted it and moved on. In a lot of ways, I think it turned into a good thing for us because it let us focus on our marriage and each other. We got married because we loved each other and are best friends, not because we were determined to have children together. We talked about it and really thought it would let us live a life focused on each other and having fun doing what we want together. 5 years later, she is now in her second trimester with a baby we unexpectedly conceived naturally. Things change, and I think everything happens for a reason. He is not any less of a man if he never has children. If he focuses on being a good husband and being the best person he can be, he will be more of a man than a lot of fathers are. Story 4. I am married to a man who was told his entire life, "You're the only grandson. It's your job to carry on the family name." This is a family that was fully aware that childhood cancer had a real chance of making him infertile, and we found out 2 years ago that it indeed had. Talk to your brother's wife as well in all of this. My husband went through a really tough time convinced that I was going to leave him for someone I could have kids with. "You would be such a great mom and I am depriving you of that," he would say. It still breaks my heart to think he actually had that idea in his head. Other than that, just love and support him. Listen for as long as it takes. Help him understand his only value in the world wasn't teetering on the fact that he could have kids or not. Good luck. Original poster. Story 5. As another man, I'm not sure what you can say that will make your brother feel better about his predicament. His wife needs to be the one to console him. You should let him know you are there for him and give him some space to come to terms with it. Story 6. As an adopted child whose parents had biological kids of their own after me, the most important thing about my dad being a dad is all the normal stuff. Teaching me to fish, ride a bike, about life, helping me through the rough bits, and so on. Yes, there were times when we both said things we didn't mean, and I definitely acted out more than my siblings, but he will always be my father and always be my dad. Story 7. I have a buddy who adopted a daughter who was about 8 when they did so. Instead of giving her structure and setting her straight, he listened to her, learned about her interests, found out what she found important, and encouraged her. I cannot even begin to describe the love and respect between those two. When she left for college, and I'm paraphrasing here because he was when he told the story, "Dad, do you want to know the best thing about having you as a dad? When people have children, they don't get a choice about most things. They wait 9 months and their kid shows up. But not for me. You chose to adopt me. You picked me. You saw the scars, the anger, the loneliness, the challenges you'd face, and you still picked me. And then not only did you love me, but you didn't try to change who I was. You connected with me the way I wanted as an 8-year-old. You were a grown man, and you thought whatever random thing I wanted to talk about was the most interesting thing in the world. You are such incredible parents because when given the chance, you didn't do the easy way by having your own kids. You found a child that didn't want to be loved, who didn't love herself, and showed her that she was wrong. She just needed to wait for her hero to tell her that he'd picked her, that he wanted her. So if anyone ever says I'm not your kid, just remember that I had a choice too. I have people who birthed me someplace, but just like you chose me, I pick you. You're my dad, and mom is mom. And I know we all made the right choice. He told this story so vividly, and it had such an impact on me. I myself can't have my own children, but that's due to something with my wife and not myself. But I still cannot have biological kids. But this story gives me hope. This hope gives me peace. And this story may speak to him too. Story 8. Just be there for him. If he wants to hang out, hang out. If he wants to cry, be that shoulder. If he is down, be there to brighten the day and take his mind off it. In a world where men don't get the emotional support they need, support him emotionally. Story 9. First, I think you should not talk logic and say rational things to your brother. He is now thinking with his emotions because the caveman we all still have inside thinks he's not man enough to have a baby. I think you should make him feel like a masculine man. Story 10. Just catch a kid for him. Those things are everywhere at parks, and they're relatively slow. I have a few on display in my living room that I caught last weekend. Story 11. Let him know he is not alone. The fertility clinic told me that I would likely be unable to have kids as well. So my wife and I decided to have a child using a donor, and I now have an 11-year-old son who is my best bud. I have loved him with all of my heart from the moment he came out, and he is completely my boy. We went on to have another child naturally, which was a complete shock to us both, and there is no difference in how I view or feel about my kids. Story 12. Ring him 3 times a night and spend half an hour making wailing noises at him. For a year. More seriously, I know people in their 40s who skipped having children and lived their own lives instead, and none of them regret it. Story 13. First, it's not your job to help him get over it. Don't take on his burden. You don't know what he's thinking or feeling, and being helpful isn't about taking things away. Second, don't try to rush him through it so you can feel better about the situation. Just let him deal with it in his time. Third, talk about something else until he's ready to talk about it. There's nothing worse than having to deal with difficult matters, having others know I'm dealing with it, and having it come up constantly. In summary, give him some space, stop being his therapist, and go do something fun and low stress together. He'll share if and when he's ready. Story 14. There are so many unwanted and unloved children out there who are just waiting to be adopted. Getting a woman pregnant is something every fool can do, but raising a child into a functioning adult is a different story. Story 15. Procreation is one of the 3 legs our manly stool has, with providing and protecting being the others. Like those, though, it can be interpreted widely and expressed differently by different men. Wooing and sex are part of it, but it sounds like he's got that down. Raising a child or children is of course part of it, whether they are biologically yours or not. I'm a stepdad, and I love it. But making something new with your mind or hands also falls under procreation, as does mentoring, teaching, and setting a good example. How he scratches that particular manly itch will be up to him and his wife, but there is no shortage of options. Story 16. Buy a case of his favorite beer, start a fire, and talk about anything other than that. Once he's about 5 or 6 in, tell him you're so sorry to hear about his recent discovery. Tell him that if he ever needs to talk about anything to just go to you. If you guys don't drink, treat him to a brother's night and mention the shoulder and ear later on in the event. If you're not into the country scene, then go to the movies or bowling or golf or whatever you guys do. Story 17. This is the best I can do. I'm really sorry this happened to you, brother. I know how much you want a family. If you want to talk about it or if there is anything else I can do, I'm right here. You're still my brother, you'll always be, and I know you'll overcome this. Much courage and strength to you and your brother. Story 18. Tell him there are many young children and babies out there waiting for adoption. Being a father is more than providing your DNA. It's being the role model for their lives, teaching them how to read, tie their shoes, how to fish, and play football. He can do all those things with an adopted child that will love him and see him as their dad. Story 19. I know it's a poor substitute, but grab him one of these little boys. Story 20. The measure of a man is not his spermatozoa, and he can create great things without ejaculating. He needs to find a purpose in life beyond passing on genes. That said, they could theoretically do some genetic engineering in the future. If there's one field that's growing rapidly right now, it's biotechnology. Assuming he can produce genes, there are possibilities. Story 21. Nothing much you can do but tell him you're there for him. His biological line is pretty much done. He needs time to grieve because his hopes and dreams of having a family with his wife have been taken away. All you can give him is empathy, which he'll surely appreciate. But there are many options out there for him and his wife. 1. Living a child-free life. No kids, stress, or worries. 2. They can have a sperm donor from a stranger, brother, or relative to help his wife become pregnant. My only issue with this is if they never tell the child the truth. I am against this and hope that parents always tell a child the truth about their origin or adoption from a young age. 3. Adopt. Story 22. I would not say much. Just be there for him and say you are sorry. He needs someone who listens more than anything, I think. Thanks for being a good brother for him. Story 23. It takes more than sperm to be a father. There are several options today. Adoption is a wonderful thing. So many kids need good homes. Most of all, just be there for him. He isn't any less of a man or person. He is just him. Story 24. This is impossible for me to relate to. I've known since I was a teenager that I didn't want to be a father. I had a vasectomy when I was 20. I'd been saving for it since I got my first job at 16 since my dad gave me a car. And I didn't have to buy my own. It took a while to find a doctor who would do it. Finally asked the nearest Planned Parenthood for help, and they found the doctor for me. I may be talking out of my mind here, but just be there for your brother. Let him vent. He'll have to find his own way through this. Story 25. Many people believe that life is about bringing new people into this world. Truly a noble pursuit, to create new life and help them grow and appreciate life. But it is just as noble to love and help those around us be happy and appreciate life. Not everyone can be a good father, but everyone has the capacity to be a good friend. Life isn't just about passing on your genes. We can leave behind much more than just deoxyribonucleic acid. Through speech, music, literature, and movies, what we've seen, heard, felt, anger, joy, and sorrow, these are the things I will pass on. That's what I live for. We need to pass the torch and let our children read our messy and sad history by its light. We have all the magic of the digital age to do that with. The human race will probably come to an end sometime, and new species may rule over this planet. Earth may not be forever, but we still have the responsibility to leave what traces of life we can. Building the future and keeping the past alive are one and the same thing. Solid Snake, Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. Story 26. I'm reminded of the anecdote about a British Prime Minister, possibly Disraeli or someone from that period, who was infertile. When a political opponent brought it up, he responded, "You boast of your prowess at an activity where any barbarian is your equal and any jackass your superior. A real Destruction 100 moment." Story 27. Be there for him. Also reassure him that this doesn't make him any less of a man or human being, and that his wife married him because she loves him and not his ability to reproduce. Also, I know others have said not to mention adoption, and I'm not sure if you are religious, but in these situations I look at it like sometimes God allows challenging or difficult things to happen in people's lives because he knows that, first, challenges and hardships make you so much stronger when you accept and rise above them, and second, there may be a child out there that needs a man just like him to change their lives. He could be the best father to an adopted child and make the biggest impact on the world. The adoption thing may not be a conversation you should have right away, but in time you could maybe mention how big of an impact it could make on his and the child's life. Everyone's life looks different and not everyone can have the perfect picture in their head, but there are ways to find the beauty in the storm. I know he wants his own children, of course, but sometimes life deals us unexpected cards and you have to take what you're given and turn it into something better than you ever thought. I'm not a man, so I can't personally relate to this, and I know you asked for the opinions of the men here, but I can say that I personally wouldn't love or think any less of my husband if this was his case. I hope things look up for him, and I hope he finds the good in the bad situation. Story 28. It is a grieving process. Infertility is a strange and misunderstood condition. We ended up adopting 2 kids. It does not need to be a suggestion, though, as you mentioned. Everybody goes through stuff. That happens to be one of their challenges. Acknowledge and move on. Story 29. My grandfather raised my mother and aunt after my grandmother had enough of their biological father. Even though we're not related, he's my grandfather, and a great one at that. Blood doesn't matter at all, and thinking it does can lead to huge cycles of grief. We're all human and here together. As much as I want to have kids, if I found out my wife or I couldn't reproduce, I would certainly be upset for a bit because I think a lot of people want to see their own offspring. But in another sense, I would get satisfaction from raising a child who otherwise might not have a loving family. Story 30. To quote that great philosophical work, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, there's a big difference between being someone who sired a child and someone who raised it. That second one is where the tears, the trials, and the triumphs are to be found.